So here's a scenario. You're pretty awkward. Definitely not the best of the ladies, but that's not for the lack of trying. Just when you think your luck is never gonna change, you notice your new neighbor, who also happens to be the most attractive girl that you've ever seen. So you then do something completely out of character. You introduce yourself and offer to show her around the neighborhood, and somehow things go really, really well. She even invites you over to her place later that evening. You begin to wonder whether your terrible luck with the ladies is finally changing. Is this the one? Sadly, the answer is no. No, your luck is definitely not changing, and no, she's definitely not the one. She turns out to be another man-eating spider woman, and you just happen to be her next meal. For those who still haven't guessed from the intro or even read the title, today's video is indeed on the Joro-Gumo, the man-eating spiders of Japanese folklore. So if you do have a fear of spiders, then I guess I'll be seeing you in the next video. The Joro-Gumo are another Japanese yokai that take the form of a spider, though they have been known to change their appearance to a more seductive woman when it's time to feed, a diet that consists mostly of young men. The name Joro-Gumo translates to mean entangling bride, which of course refers to the way they entangle their prey in their web, but its name originally was thought to mean whore spider, so take from that what you will. In Japan, spiders were thought to possess supernatural powers, but only certain species. The Golden Orb Weaver was believed to be the most common form for the Joro-Gumo. The size of these spiders varies to quite a ridiculous extent, being anywhere from a few centimeters long to large enough to kill a grown man. The Orb Weavers were particularly known for their vibrant colours, their large size, and the very strong webs that they weave. Oddly enough, the Golden Orb Weaver isn't too different from a regular spider until it reaches a certain age, and that age happens to be 400 years old. Until then, they spend most of their time in solidarity in places you'd expect to find a spider, so everywhere. Once they reach 400 years old, the Orb Weaver gains its magical powers and essentially becomes a Joro-Gumo. They develop the ability to transform and shapeshift into a beautiful woman, and it's in this form that they deceive and seduce young men. The Joro-Gumo are often described as having a cold heart and feeling no remorse for those they murder. To them, humans are no different to an insect, just another victim to feed on. Their favourite meal of course being young, handsome men. During the Edo period, there were stories of beautiful women luring men into abandoned and secluded shacks, where they would play a Japanese instrument known as a biwa. The sound of the instrument would distract and set the victim into a deep trance, and that's when the Joro-Gumo would strike, wrapping him in her silk thread until she was hungry. This process, however, isn't just as simple as catching a man and killing him. The Joro-Gumo take pleasure in consuming their meal, injecting their victim with a venom that slowly weakens them, allowing the Joro-Gumo to really savour their meal, while their unfortunate victims are sentenced to a long and painful death. They can be found all throughout the forests, the caves, and the dark and secluded places of Japan, except for in Hokkaido. The reason why I've yet to find. But maybe Hokkaido was just the arachnophobic part of Japan that just wasn't having any of that killer spider woman nonsense. But I'm sure those native to Japan, or those who are more informed in regards to the traditions and superstitions found in Hokkaido, will be able to let us know in the comment section. We did mention that they develop a variety of powers, and the Joro-Gumo are extremely cunning, capable of concealing themselves for hundreds of years despite being in plain sight. The girl next door could be a Joro-Gumo, and you'd likely never know. As you may expect, they could also control other spiders, and it became fairly common for the Joro-Gumo to be depicted as a half-woman, half-spider creature, accompanied by hundreds, if not thousands, of spider children. Now, tales of these children vary from regular spiders to fire-breathing lunatics who burn down the houses of anyone who becomes suspicious of their mother. So be careful who you go around accusing of being a man-eating spider woman. Perhaps the most famous story featuring a Joro-Gumo is the tale of the Joren Joro-Gumo, the mistress of Joren Falls, a waterfall in the city of Shizuoka. The story begins with a man resting by a waterfall, when all of a sudden he could feel his feet being tied together by spider thread, and he was slowly being dragged down into the water below. In order to free himself, he cut the threads and tied them to a tree. The spiders were so strong that they uprooted the tree and dragged it into the water. Eventually word would spread of the incident, and the Joren waterfall was abandoned by the villagers for fear of what lived there. There was one, however, who did venture to the waterfall, completely unaware of the Joren Joro-Gumo and the stories of the surrounding area. The man was a lumberjack from out of town, and so he began chopping wood, until he eventually dropped his axe into the water. He dove down to retrieve it, but when he eventually resurfaced, unable to find his axe, standing there in front of him was a beautiful young woman. He also noticed that his axe had been returned to him. The woman made the man swear that he wouldn't tell anyone about her, and so he kept the secret, for as long as he could. One day the man had a little too much to drink and he began to tell the story of the beautiful woman by the waterfall. Once he had told the story, he fell into a deep slumber, never to awaken again. This ending certainly does raise some questions, and for me personally it made me wonder what else the Joro-Gumo were capable of. Do they have some kind of power over those who swear an oath to them? Is their secret or their promise binding? The story of the Joro-Gumo and the Lumberjack does seem to have many different variations, most of which seem to be about the man falling in love with the woman, only to later realise that he's slowly getting weaker and weaker. He eventually seeks help from a monk who tells him that the woman is evil and that he should stay away, which of course is advice that he doesn't listen to. Regardless of the details, the story always seems to end in the exact same way, with the man falling into a deep slumber, never to awake again. The Joro-Gumo are a yokai that we can easily brand as evil, as their actions are quite cold and calculated, bordering on vindictive, but at times they also just act like a spider. So whether it's just in their nature to behave that way, or whether they are an evil entity, I guess it's down to your own interpretation. Feel free to share your thoughts and ideas with me in the comments below. As always, I've been your host, Mythology and Fiction Explained, wishing you all a very happy and exciting new year.